that hard? Is that sad?
Yeah.
Justin, with the maples, I mean, I was always taught maples are very soft, and with storms that we have, are there certain maples that are more resistant or more stronger to withstand?
Great question. So generally they call deciduous trees hardwood trees, but there are deciduous trees that are not hardwood, like the silver maple, American linden, hackberry. But in terms of maples, this is my opinion, sugar maple, why we promote the heck out of it, is it is more tolerant of our storms. It has better structure. I wouldn't say harder wood that saves it, but it has better structure. Those silver maples want to do multi-leaders that come apart in storms, and the same with red maple. Sugar maple can do that, but it's not as prone to it.
So sugar maple would be a good candidate.
Yes, of the maples, it's going to be the best storm tolerant tree.
As far as the oaks, oaks are usually pretty solid anyway.
Oaks are the best.
They're slower growing.
They're slower growing, but you'd be surprised if you can plant an oak from an acorn, and once it gets its feet set, its roots going, that thing can grow 2 to 3 feet a year in a favorable year for certain species, like swamp white oak, overcup oak, red oak. But like a bur oak, it's going to be a little slower. Chinquapin oak's a little slower. And people are impatient. That's why we plant so much silver maple, American elm, other things. But it's not necessarily bad to have those fast-growing trees. We need a diversity of species across the community, but we also need a diversity of age and class and type of growth. Things need to be cycling through, in and out over time. Does that make sense? So you do want a few cottonwood, a few silver maple, a few American elm, but way more oaks and sugar maples.
No cottonwood. My air
No
conditioner
cottonwood.
does not like that.
I see a cottonwood right there. Yeah. So that's our grand.
Music sounds beautiful with the wind,
Yeah.
you know, but all that. Yeah, if you can get cottonwoods, that'd be great.
Maple, and Charlotte's got from that tree over there, that's a red maple. The big difference between the two, these are the two most commonly planted maples now for ornamental use, the sugar maple and the red maple. The sugar maple has this palm-shaped leaf that has 3 prominent, why am I drawing a blank?
Lobes.
No, lobes. Yeah, geez. My brain's doing a fart here. So that's a sugar maple, generally 3 lobe, but there are always a couple pairs of laterally spreading base lobes on that. So I call it 5 lobed for a sugar maple, whereas a red maple is almost always prominently 3 lobed. And then there's serrated teeth along the edges of those lobes. The sugar maple is more blunt, right? No, not serrated teeth along the edge of that. So those are the big 2 differences in a red maple and a sugar maple. Then if you wanted winter tree ID, you could get up in here closer. And the sugar maple has a long bud, a long pointed bud, that if you poked yourself with it, it might draw blood. Whereas the red maple is rounded, and in the winter they're a round red bud. They're not red right now, but by the winter they will be. And that's 2 big differences on the 2.
And then the twigs instead of alternate, right?
Now, all maples are opposite. So when you're doing tree ID, the big thing to keep in your mind is opposite
See, like
branching.
this is not.
All maples are opposite buds, opposite branching. It might not look like it, like this particular particular branch I pulled, look, there's a bud here that didn't have an opposite one come out. But yes, they are opposite, and so they'll both be opposite. That's maples, ash, dogwoods, and buckeyes. So, and we remember mad buck, if you can remember that acronym, mad buck, maples, ash, dogwoods, and buckeyes are opposite. The other trees are alternate, the leaves coming out alternately across them on the stem. Does that make sense to you? That'll get you pretty far on tree ID.
And then the bark.
Yeah, the bark. So for me, sugar maple, especially with maturity, boy, look at that chain. That tree ate that chain. That's interesting. Sugar maple, if you compared it to the silver maple, you'll see it's not nearly as flaky or peely.
And the really old ones, it's like,
It's a ghostly gray.
and it's
Yep, and it will have plates as they mature on the old trees.
Can that chain cause that tree?
Yes, that chain has girdle. This stem right here, it has tried to grow around it. So that's not a good thing for that tree. I don't know, did they try to chain the two stems together? Yeah, to keep it from splitting. Because you can see that thing did split through.
Chain together. We both went down.
Oh.
Yeah. See it over here.
All the way up. Healthy. Come
See it over
stand
here,
near
chain
the
together.
tree.
Tug on that chain,
Just
Nelson.
stand up against the tree so I can take your picture.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Normally,
Pam too.
we want our shade trees to have one single leader as high into the tree as we can get it.
Pam.
This one had a pair,
Okay,
and one
take your
tried to
mask down.
split out, so they chained it together.
Hold on, one more. Okay, thank you.
We should have pruned the tree right here 40 years ago. We should have taken off one of the leaders and pushed it higher into the tree.
And now another sign of a healthy, a well cared for tree is around the base. right?
Yes, you do want this. You want what we're seeing here, this root flare at the base visibly coming out for its root system to spread laterally. If it goes into the ground like a telephone pole, it's been planted too deep.
Or there's been too much weed eating.
Well, yeah, right.
You know, it's got roots sticking out the dirt there. Is that like that up there? Is that
Yeah, this
okay.
won't bother this tree.
Yeah.
It's not ideal. And then, so if you had the time and the resources, you'd mulch this.
but not all the way up against it? You don't.
No,
It's
yep.
like about here.
Right, right. Keep the mulch off the base of the tree.
Different trees require different depths of planting.
Not generally. You find the first lateral roots and get them just under the soil surface, an inch or two. So this is the best time of year to plant trees because it's cool. You can take them out of the container, take all the soil off the top of that root ball, and see what the roots are doing. So you're going to find those first lateral roots and get them an inch or two under the soil, or maybe part of that is your mulch that you're going to use. But also make sure the roots are spreading laterally. Most trees sold in containers have some circling roots that you got to deal with at planting time. Either cut them off or spread them out. So that's why I do it all in the fall. October, November, man, that's the best time to plant deciduous trees. Or again in March, April, early May when the weather's cool.
You see some trees that they're large and they maybe a strong wind came up and they just pushed them over. It's like there's no taproot. Do not all trees do the taproot
The
thing?
tree loses its taproot, so the oaks and the hickories are pretty good at maintaining a pretty good taproot for many, many years. But like this tree here, if we dug it up, that soil, that root plate under there is probably about that deep, and it's just moving out laterally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's no carrot taproot in this. But young oak trees, maybe 10 to 15 years old, if you dug them up, they might have a taproot. Root system of a tree is tall as the tree is, it's spreading those roots laterally. It's all around us. We're all standing above the root system of this tree.
I was always taught that what you see above is what's down below.
Similar, but they'll even spread wider than the canopy of the tree. You're right. So they say, picture a wine glass. The canopy is that part of the glass that you're drinking from, and the lower part of the stem, that's the root system. spreading laterally.
Okay.
Now, how much dirt can you put around that tree to cover those cotton thickened roots?
Yeah, don't do that. If it's a tree you value, spread some mulch around it. That's a good idea, but don't cover root systems with soil. Now, big trees like this can tolerate some of that, so it's probably not going to kill it. If you wanted to plant a little garden around this, I wouldn't do it because it's not helping the tree, but you can get away with a little bit of that.
The reason I was wondering, you go around the tree with your lawnmower,
Yes.
hit that root.
Yep, and that's not ideal for the tree, is it? So
No.
another difference about maples, silver maple and red maple are very notorious for shallow rooting. You're going to be bumping them with the mower all the time. Sugar maple is more deeply rooted, so it usually has less of that. I don't know, Charlotte, if the soil here is a little shallow, and maybe it's a little harder below for putting it that higher up. I don't think so. I see all the trees with really nice trunk though, so somebody did a good job. This ash tree over there, not much trunk there. Okay, so I don't want to belabor the point, but I'm a fan of the tree. The lawn is something I tolerate. So I'm opposite of most people. And what I do with lawn care is all for tree care. So I mulch around my tree. At home I can do my lawn in 10 minutes because I've turned everything else into trees, shrubs, flowers, gardens. That's my approach to life. Baby the trees and tolerate the lawn. And we do need a little bit of a lawn. A park has to have a lawn. I would never suggest that it shouldn't. But I like what you've done here. You're not fussing about the trying to keep grass.
Justin, I have a maple that was trimmed earlier this spring. It's a pretty big maple. It's pretty old. But it has a lot of suckers that came off the cuts. And I talked to the guy that cut it, and I said, you're going to have to probably come back and get those off of there. He said it could be some issues with the nutrients to the tree. He says, do you have a dog urinating on it? And I said, I don't have a dog. But he said that could cause problems. I mean, is that true?
Do you know what kind of tree it was?
It's a maple, but I'm trying to, it has the really peely bark.
That sounds like silver maple, and if you take a big branch off a silver maple, it's going to do epicormic sprouting from that cut all the time because it wants to put, those leaves are its food production. You took off an arm and it said, I need some food production. I'm putting out new leaves.
It put out a lot of them.
Got to come from branches. Silver maples are notorious for that. This sugar maple wouldn't do that probably. But a silver maple and a red maple would be a little more likely to do that.
And it's
I
also...
don't think it has anything to do with dog urine.
Okay.
How about human urine?
I've never heard of that.
Okay.
It's just trying to balance its food production again. So, and probably cottonwood, fast-growing trees, they will do that epicormic sprouting until the cows come home. They're trying to survive.
Okay, good to know.
Sycamore will do that really hard if it's storm damaged.
Why do sycamores, why do they have such peely bark?
Isn't that cool about us?
Except when you're trying to mow and it's got big chunks of it.
It's part of nature's wondrous pageant. I love that oak, that ghostly color of the sycamore in the winter. But you're right, they're cursed as a messy tree because they drop a lot of bark and then the pieces of twigs and the balls, the seed balls.
So that's, I mean, that's healthy for them. I mean, if they lose a lot of bark, that doesn't mean they're diseased,
You
right?
gotta shed that bark somehow. They shed it off in these big plates that peel off. Whereas the sugar maple or a bur oak, it's holding on to all of its bark. It's just getting thicker, thicker, thicker.
So is there a way you can tell like the age of a tree without cutting it?
You can, they have what they call an increment bore. The foresters all carry one in their pocket for field forestry. But if you get one long enough, you can run it through here, take out a core sample and age the tree. Otherwise, it's a guessing game. And boy, I'm not good at it. There's been trees I go, that's 150 years old, and it's 70 years old.
Because we have a maple at home and it's just huge.
Is it hollow?
Probably a silver maple again. Those
Yeah,
things, yeah.
mine's huge too, and it's had some storm damage, so
Yeah.
too bad it wasn't a sugar maple.
Well, hey, don't forget our silver maples because they did a lot of good service. Getting into the wind, giving us shade, wind protection, and yeah. They've been a good tree. I don't want to say we shouldn't ever have silver maple, but it wouldn't be the first tree I plant in my yard because they come apart and stuff.
What causes the middle of the tree to kind of dry rot?
You can get dry rot.
You got a good surface around, but in the middle it's hollow.
For this specific tree or a different tree?
I got a lot of trees that are that way.
Yes. Show me an old hackberry or an old silver maple, probably a cottonwood. I'll show you a tree, a catalpa, that's hollow in the middle. And that just proves to you that the tree grows, its living skin is just a few cells thick underneath the bark. Everything else inside of that is dead wood. That doesn't mean that dead wood doesn't have purpose, because it's helping with the structure of the tree, storing some energy, but it's dead. It's just a living little tissue. Every year the tree has to regrow itself around itself to live. And when the middle starts to hollow out, you can get a tree 80 feet tall that is completely hollow in the middle, with, except for what, maybe an inch thick layer of yeah, and it's not dead. And they can last a long time. A catalpa could live dozens of years, yeah. But generally, when they hollow out, they are a safety hazard concern.
Is that also maybe contributed to like a damage to a limb that's unseen and then it rots?
The decay gets back in and comes down the middle of the tree. Yep.
Silver maples are good for honeybees.
Because they're hollow and hold a lot of cavities. Yep. And raccoons and
Well, they need homes.
yep, birds.
So if anybody has questions, ask him, because Justin wants to get into his tree.
Well, thank you guys for coming out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming out.
Learned a lot. Good. You have a lot of trees?
Well, most people faithful.
Well, there's a lot of seeds over there. I guess I haven't seen all that.
Not a review there.
Cool. Oh, it does for people that donated? Oh, how much were benches?
There's a barbed wire going right through the
I've seen trees eat bicycles and fences, and it's pretty neat to see.
God, the elm tree was a woven wire fence in there.
Yeah.
It came up through the fence. There's no getting it out. The tree's probably been around now.
Helps hold the fence up now.
Well, the fence is gone. It's been cut.
You better go see that new grandson. Is that what it is?
Granddaughter. Just two granddaughters. I'm not in charge of that.
I know you are.
I hope they.
You get encouraged, you know.
What's your email? Is it on the handout?
Oh yeah, J. Evertson 1 at UNL. Should have been on the handout.
Okay, if it's on the handout, I'll find them.
You're from Waverly? Yep. My parents built a house in 79, and they're on the main drag right over there.
All right.
And that used to be all lined with the silver maple.
Right next to the road.
My mother still has the original. Right up the main drag, so you can drive it down there. But there's so many that are gone.
Okay, I will. Please.
Yeah.
All right, brother. What's that street called?
Guildford.
Guildford. By the car wash.
Yes. Yep. A couple down from the car wash.
All right. What's your name?
Rick Harris.
Oh, I know your brother then. Kurt Harris. I thought you looked familiar.
Oh, did you?
4-H leader. You were great too.